Mothers clutched their children, stumbling through the dark, trying to escape. But the gas was everywhere, thick, suffocating, inescapable. Within hours, 800 people were dead. Cows, dogs, birds. Every living creature caught in the path collapsed where they stood. The hospitals were overwhelmed, unprepared for what was happening. No one knew what the gas was, how to treat it, or how to survive it. What caused this nightmare? Investigators later found that water had seeped into a storage tank containing 40 tons of methyl isocyanate. The chemical reacted violently with the water, raising pressure and temperature until it blew through safety valves. But the plant's emergency systems, refrigeration, scrubbers, and alarms, either weren't working or had been shut down to save money. It was a catastrophe born of negligence and greed. The tragedy didn't end when the sun rose. As dawn broke over Bhopal, the full horror was visible. Streets were littered with bodies. Survivors wandered in shock, their eyes red and blistered. Families searched for loved ones among piles of the dead. The aftermath was chaos. Hospitals ran out of oxygen and medicine. Doctors had no protective gear. Many of the victims who survived the first night died slowly in the days that followed, from lung damage, blindness, or organ failure. And then came the lies. Union Carbide executives downplayed the scale of the disaster. The company's American CEO fled India before he could face trial. Local officials blamed worker error. Victims waited decades for justice, trapped in endless legal battles while their water and soil remained poisoned. Even today, more than 40 years later, the land around the old factory remains contaminated with heavy metals and toxic waste. Children are still born with deformities. Cancer rates are higher than average. The people of Bhopal continue to suffer from the lingering shadow of that one terrible night. The official death toll was around 3,800, but researchers estimate that between 15,000 and 20,000 people may have ultimately died from the gas and its long-term effects. It remains one of the deadliest industrial disasters in history. Bhopal changed everything. The world could no longer pretend that corporate negligence was just an accident. Governments demanded accountability. International regulations for hazardous chemical plants were rewritten. Companies were forced to adopt emergency response plans and stricter maintenance protocols. But the people of Bhopal still live with the consequences, not just in their bodies, but in their memories. The night of December 2, 1984, was more than a tragedy. It was a warning that the pursuit of profit, when stripped of responsibility, can destroy entire cities. And long after the gas cleared, the smell of it, sharp, metallic, and merciless, stayed in the air, as if reminding the world what happens when safety becomes secondary to cost. Because that night, Bhopal didn't just lose thousands of lives. It lost its breath. Deepwater Horizon, the ocean on fire. On April 20, 2010, the night sky above the Gulf of Mexico lit up like an inferno. The Deepwater Horizon, a massive offshore drilling rig owned by Transocean and leased by BP, had suffered a catastrophic pressure failure nearly a mile beneath the sea. Within seconds, a column of gas shot up the drill pipe, ignited, and exploded, turning the billion-dollar platform into a floating fireball. 11 workers were killed instantly. 17 more were severely injured. But the true disaster wasn't just the explosion. It was what came after. Deep beneath the surface, the Macondo wellhead had ruptured. Crude oil began gushing out at uncontrollable pressure, a black torrent erupting directly into the sea. BP's engineers scrambled to seal it, but nothing worked. For the next 87 days, the world watched in horror as millions of barrels of oil poured into the Gulf. Each passing day brought new footage of an ocean transformed into a sea of death. Black waves stretched across hundreds of miles, slicking coastlines in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. Seabirds struggled to fly, their feathers glued together by thick crude. Turtles and dolphins washed up lifeless. Coral reefs choked beneath the rising sludge. The blowout preventer, The rig's final safety mechanism was supposed to stop this exact kind of disaster. It's a massive valve system designed to seal the well in case of a pressure surge. But during the explosion, it malfunctioned. Whether through faulty design, poor maintenance, or pure bad luck, it failed to close. And with that failure, the ocean was left bleeding, and nothing could stop it. BP tried everything. They dropped heavy containment domes, lowered robotic submarines, pumped drilling mud and cement into the well. All failed. Underwater cameras broadcast the leak live, an unending stream of black oil spiraling into blue water, visible proof of humanity's worst nightmare, a wound in the planet itself. Meanwhile, onshore, thousands of cleanup workers rushed to contain the spreading slick. They scrubbed beaches, burned surface oil, and sprayed chemical dispersants into the sea. Chemicals that later caused burns, nausea, and respiratory illness among the very people sent to clean it up. Entire fishing industries collapsed overnight as contaminated seafood and dead marine life crippled the Gulf's economy. Local families who had lived off those waters for generations suddenly found their livelihoods and their futures gone. The human cost was only the beginning. By the time the well was finally capped on July 15, 2010, an estimated 210 million gallons of crude oil had spilled, the largest marine oil spill in human history. BP faced worldwide outrage and billions in fines, but the ecological damage would last decades. The oil had seeped into coral reefs, deep-sea ecosystems, and marshlands, poisoning food chains at every level. Satellite images captured the dark stain stretching across the Gulf, a scar visible from space. Scientists called it the ocean's Chernobyl. It wasn't just an environmental catastrophe, it was a revelation of how fragile our technological confidence truly was. The Deepwater Horizon explosion forced governments and corporations to confront the risks of deep-sea drilling. A reminder that the quest for profit beneath the waves carries consequences far beyond what we can control. Years later, survivors of the rig still speak of that night, of fire raining from the sky, and the sound of the ocean itself burning. And though the flames eventually died, the Gulf never truly healed, because what burned that night wasn't just oil. It was trust. In technology, in safety, in control. The Deepwater Horizon didn't just spill oil, it exposed the truth that even the deepest oceans aren't safe from human hands. Sverdlovsk, the hidden anthrax outbreak. The year was 1979 in the industrial city of Sverdlovsk, deep inside the Soviet Union. It began quietly, with strange fevers appearing in factory workers near Compound 19, a secret military microbiology lab. Within days, people started collapsing on the streets, gasping for air, skin turning black around open sores. No one knew what was happening, and the government was determined to keep it that way. Sverdlovsk was part of the USSR's biological weapons program, a classified network of labs tasked with developing pathogens capable of mass destruction. Inside Compound 19, scientists were working with Bacillus anthracis, the bacteria that causes anthrax. It's one of the deadliest agents known to science. A microscopic spore that can survive for decades and kill within days of exposure. On April 2, 1979, something went terribly wrong. A technician forgot to replace a filter in the lab's ventilation system. For just a few hours, the unfiltered exhaust pumped a fine cloud of airborne anthrax spores out of the building and into the city's wind. The breeze carried it south, directly over nearby factories, residential blocks, and a military base.